Welcome everybody to part 2 of the Indigenous Math Education Symposium, Igniting the Sparkle Sharing. This is an exciting part of the program where we have people who have been working on their projects or ideas, bringing math and community and culture together and working to share their ideas with all of us. So thank you for everybody who is joining us. It's good to see you all here. And we have two presenters. Different groups. We have Megan, Hannah, and Tamara Shand, who will talk to us first. And then we have Nikki Lineham, who will talk to us in the second part. But before we get going, let me just acknowledge that I am coming to you from the traditional unceded territories of the Hunkaminam speaking people. And the event is hosted by the University of British Columbia on the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam people. And I know you're all coming from different places, so if you feel ready and able, you could just introduce yourself in the chat and say whose lands you're coming from, and then we kind of have a sense of where everybody is. And while you're doing that, I'm going to just introduce our first speakers, and I'll be admitting people at the same time. I'll introduce our first speakers, Megan, Hannah, and Tamara Shand. Megan is from the Métis Nation, and she's also an Indigenous enhancement teacher in the Vancouver School District. And Tamara is a master's student and educator working in the Vancouver School District, and she teaches in the grade 1-2 classroom. And they have been working together and will share a little bit about their project. So I'll pass to you, Megan and Tamara.
Thanks, Cynthia. All right, we just put our timer on. So here is the slides.
So we are presenting Drumming Up Connections, Exploring Math and Culture, and we're exploring math and culture through Megan's Paper Drum project. So first, I'd like to acknowledge that we are speaking to you and we're learning on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. It's significant to me because I was born on this land and grew up on this land, but only learned about the history of it in the last 5 years. So I am committed and through this sharing on deepening my relationship and my understanding of Indigenous knowledge.
So I work with Tamara at her school. We work at the same school together. And we've been working on a project that started a couple of years ago for me before I was at this school I'm at now. It's called the Paper Drum Project, and I presented it for the Indigenous Math Symposium a few times, talking about a couple of adaptations that I've done for it. And basically the project started in my PDP program. And I was looking at my drum. We made a drum in my program, and I was trying to figure out, well, where is all the math that is in a drum? Because when we're talking about there, we're talking about like what are all the skills and the knowledge, and there is inherent math in making drums as well. So I was looking at it and trying to figure out, well, how can I apply this, make it a project in my practicum school? And then I got into a couple of questions that came out from that. And I was thinking, well, my first question was like, how much sinew do you need to string a drum? So I had the kids and I gave them some parameters, which you can see there, and had them do that question, which led me to thinking about, well, what other math is in a drum and making a drum? So this is a real Indigenous drum. But of course, having and making a real drum is inaccessible to all students. So what I did was I came up with a project where students were making a paper drum. So not a real drum, but there is still protocol that we go over in this unit, just because it's good and important to know that information just about drums in general. And that's what we did in Tamara's class. But the physical making of the drum you can see here. So you can see the drum ring, you can see the drum hide, you can see how we were hole punching the holes to string the sinew or the string. And then that is the whole project as a whole. So we're going to talk about that and what it looks like in tomorrow's class. Yes.
So I adapted this for my classroom, which is a grade 1-2 classroom, and we focused on reasoning to explore and make connections. We focused on connecting to cultural practice that's relevant to First Peoples communities, estimation, and mental math strategies, as we shall see as we go on. So the first thing we wanted to do was to situate ourselves. So I was really inspired by Verna St. Denis, who wrote that multiculturalism erases the specific and unique location of Aboriginal peoples as Indigenous to this land. And what I understood, two things struck me by Verna St. Denis' work. One was that I understood that by not centering Indigenous pedagogies, I was undermining Indigenous sovereignty. And so I felt that as an educator, it was my responsibility to step up to that. And then also as a brown-skinned person who grew up on this land, multiculturalism was actually very affirming for me. So it created a sense of internal conflict, that kind of conflict that spurs on growth. And so the way that what I came to was that I wanted to find a way to center Indigenous pedagogies in a way that also helped my students connect to their cultures. So the first thing I did to situate myself was to revisit my own culture, which is Trinidadian steel band. And I kind of felt like the more I learn about Indigenous education, the more it feels like an invitation to connect to culture, my own culture, and through that, learn more. So I started there. And then I wanted, when I introduced my students to this lesson, to ground them first in Indigenous drumming culture. So that's where we started in my classroom. So we started by Megan coming into my classroom, and we did a drum circle, an Indigenous drum circle, teaching the students the protocols, and they each had a turn to do the drums and practice some rhythms. And I was really impressed with how respectful they were, and they asked really great questions, including how do you make a drum, which gave us the entry point to do this project. Then we've done this 2 years in a row. The second year, I wanted to focus on this connection to culture. So we did this very simply by exploring on the internet different drumming cultures that was connected to my students in my class. So we looked at Japanese taiko because there's a Japanese student in my class. We looked at Ghanaian djembe, Filipino dabakan, and Scottish tams. So then some students didn't actually have a strong connection. So for them, it was also an introduction to an ancestral drumming culture. I wanted them to have an experience of what it was like to be, a felt lived experience of what it was like to be in a drum circle, to feel the harmony and the vibration. So we collaborated with the music teacher, and we were also able to bring in, you might see some wooden sticks on the ground. So we were able to introduce an aspect of musical rhythm and pattern, but that wasn't our focus, but we were able to bring in a little math there as well. And students did make a connection from our first conversation with the Indigenous drum circle to the heartbeat and things that they remembered about drumming and unity and working together as one. So then we wanted to scaffold measurement because the math in this particular project for my students was going to be focused on measurement. And we had an authentic purpose because the students wanted to know how to make a drum. So the first thing in year one, we started with non-standard measures and exploring how to measure things with non-standard units. In year two, I added embodied measurement, and I thought that made it really much stronger because the students were very, very engaged, and it gave us a reference point that we still use from time to time in terms of using our bodies to measure things. Then we started practicing standard measurements, and I gave them lots of opportunities to practice because the first year I felt like they needed a lot of support in the actual drum making. So I wanted them to really have the skill down so that when it came to the drum making, they could just do it. So they had opportunities to practice recording, and then we were planting potatoes. So they had an authentic opportunity to measure there too. So now we're ready to make our drum. So here are the students measuring and constructing. This was year one. And this was the year that I had to help with a lot of measurement. But in year two, after they'd had quite a lot of scaffolding, they were able to really use some great problem solving skills. So I gave them the measurements. We wanted 90 centimeters by about, I think it was 7 or 8 centimeters. And you can see this fellow on the left is using 3 rulers to get his 90 centimeters, and he got himself some pencil and paper and he was adding. So he was problem solving and doing computation. Others, like the fellow in the middle, used a longer measuring tape. And then some spent some time just problem solving. How do I transform this cereal box into a strip that's 90 centimeters by 8 centimeters, which means they had to problem solve cutting and adding and gluing together. So they had some very good problem solving conversations. Because circles are not in our curriculum for grade 1, 2, we just estimated how much extra do I need around this circle, and we used our drum rings to draw around. So that was a referent. And here they are making all of their drum skins. And then for stringing, I made this a problem-solving activity again. How can we attach this string? I think in the future, what I might do is have the materials prepped for them just as backup. And I might try just doing a tutorial first and then see how the problem solving goes, which one I would do in the future. Just try both. But there were some great problem solving, and what I found is students started helping each other, especially the students who this was their second year doing this, because what I found is they started sharing strategies and having mathematical conversations and just sharing with each other how they could problem solve. They made a drum.
Yeah.
So some future possibilities is some students wanted to play with size, and that was a challenge. So that brought lots of challenges. So we could explore proportion. If I'm going to make a wider drum ring, how much depth do I need to make it? We thought about exploring shape. What's the difference between a triangular or a circular or even a square drum? And we could measure sound. So those are just some of the possibilities that we were thinking about. And that brings us full circle to the end of our learning. Next steps for us is we're going to invite 2 intermediate students to come and share their culture with us. They're going to do some singing and powwow dancing and drumming to share their culture with us. So it's going across classrooms now.
Yeah. And we also had the opportunity to make some real drums as well too. So we did that last year. The kids made 2 drums and gifted them to the school because they shared my culture's idea that when you make a drum for the first time, you gift it away. So they gifted it to the school, and then the second time, hopefully, we're gonna gift it to the classroom, and then they can keep them in the classroom, which would be accessible for whenever they want to use them.
Yes. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much. Oh, maybe I'll just remove the spotlight while we kind of get ourselves ready for questions, and then I'll spotlight you guys back again. Thank you very much. That was a really lots of activity squished into 8 minutes there. So you gave us a really good idea of what you actually did with the students. And you finished before my timer went off, which is perfect. Thank you. I have a question, and maybe I can ask first, and then people can think of their own questions to kind of get going, because we have a few minutes that we can engage with some thinking about your project. Can you say a little bit about what more mathematics you thought the students learned through the making of the drum? You did some mathematics in preparation for it. I'm just wondering what more do you think that they were able to learn through the making of the drum?
I think it was a lot about core competencies for this, about conversation, about problem solving, about collaborating. So it was that kind of mathematical competency.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have? Oh,
And
yeah.
then also when I do it for the older grades, like I initially made this unit for grade 7 because they do like geometrics of circles. So it works really well with the grade 6 curriculum. And what's been really great working with Tamara is like showing how it can be adapted for a younger grade was really amazing. And it follows kind of my principles of how like Indigenous education is something that can be like cross-curricular and cross grades as well too. So there's lots of pieces that are building blocks that you can build from like grade 1 and grade 2. So like the measurement and all of basically the problem solving is a huge piece of it as well too, because I love giving the kids like these open-ended projects and they have to get really creative to be able to figure out how to do it, which kind of goes along with an idea of like how like all of these like drums and making things, there's inherently math in there, and Indigenous folks have been doing that math since forever. But then if you're actually like trying to figure out what in the curriculum the math is, then you can also apply it. So
it also
Mhm.
inspired a conversation about how, like, the ingenuity of the first people who ever made a drum, because they realized when I didn't give them a lot of guidance how difficult it was. And so there was conversation about the fact that that's mathematical and the challenge of it.
Mhm, mhm. Yes. Yeah, and you've highlighted how the doing of it is inherently mathematical. So it isn't so separate. Thank you. I want to make sure that people have a chance to ask questions. Anybody now? Raise your hand or just unmute. Monica?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. You were saying that the stringing, you might want to do a demo with them next
Mm.
time. What are some of the difficulties that the kids had? Like, did they have all the same lengths already given to them? Or were they just cutting the string and trying to figure that out? Or did they
They,
number the little dots or and try
they,
to communicate their thinking
they,
that way?
oh, that's an interesting idea. We could try that, numbering the dots in the future. I gave them the same length string. We did an estimate, and then we used an R measure. And then they had an opportunity to look at the drums that we'd made last year, and some of them had already done this activity last year. And then they were problem solving how they would string it. So I think I would next time, and the issues, to answer your question, I think was frustration level for this grade,
Yeah.
level, because they're young and
Mhm.
sometimes they really do want to be told what to do. So it's kind of a balance between giving them that opportunity to have the productive struggle, but not too much.
You know, that productive struggle is always quite the balance. Like, we don't want to tell them too much, but we also want them to like try to come to an outcome or some sort of thing that they can share with each other. So, okay, I was just kind of curious about that. Thanks.
and then when we were making the real drums last year, we had 2 drums. So it was 2 adults in the room, so 1 drum each. So when we were actually stringing the drum, it was really accessible because we were like doing it with them, and the kids took turns like doing the stringing and doing all of the pieces to it. So there wasn't that level of frustration or anything, because
With the
it
real
was just us
Yeah.
showing them exactly how to do it. So
yes.
yeah.
Great. Thanks for your question, Monica. Anyone else have any questions? I'll just remove the spotlight so I can see. You can unmute, or you can raise your hand, or you can have a comment. Doesn't need to be a question.
I'm curious what the you said there was a cultural sharing. So was that drumming and singing and dancing, or what does that?
So the
look like?
cultural sharing is to come. So there's another colleague who's an Indigenous education worker, and he often has students in his room during lunch and recess where they play drums and sing just as a community. And I sometimes help in the room. And so there are 2 intermediate students there who are amazing leaders, and we've invited them to come into my classroom to share their drumming and singing. So I think one girl will lead the drumming. There's a big powwow drum and that she's going to lead us with. I'm not sure yet what she wants to present to my class. And her friend and the young man is going to be singing and has an amazing voice.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to have them come and present to my class.
We're very lucky at our school. We have 2 drum groups. So they are amazing leaders in our school. And I help lead the drum group, the Indigenous drum group. So we have them practicing every week, and they're performing at our school if we have assemblies or any events that are happening. So it's really like integrated into our school. Like, we're always having drumming, always having singing, which is really amazing.
So they're singing songs from their area, or okay.
Well, some of them are, but some of them are the ones that we're practicing as a school, and some of the songs we were gifted, or songs that we were that are accessible that we can sing.
I think one is the honor song, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it also
And-
gives them an opportunity to share culture with us.
Their own cultures.
Yeah, their own cultures.
Yeah. Okay, anyone else have a question? Or do you have another one, Joe?
Oh, I see that there's a question in the chat here.
Looks like it's for you.
Oh, so yeah, for the question was aside from measurement, the kids for the older intermediates, the projects that I've done, it's a lot of circumference of circles, and trying to figure out. I've even like done like made it like even more advanced and had them like use the Pythagorean theorem to try to figure out the angles of the drum ring and like how to figure out and use that to figure out how many strings there would be. And that was like a really advanced version of the project that I did one time. And I've actually been working on for the UBC math program to show and make the actual unit. So that should be coming out pretty soon. And it's going to be on the UBC math website as well too. So you can see all of the math that's in there as well.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. That will be on the Indigenous Math Education website. That's part of UBC. So we're really excited to be able to have that. They look amazing, these lessons. I can vouch for it. Well, I think our time is up for our presentation and question. Thank you very much for a really rich presentation that gave us a really strong idea of what you were doing in your classroom and the purpose behind it, and also where you're thinking of going next. So thank you very much to each of you. All right, now we have Nikki Lineham, who is going to share a little bit about her really exciting project as well. Nikki is a consultant in the Vancouver, no, sorry, you're not in Vancouver, you're in Victoria. And you're just a consultant. You're a consultant in many different places, and she has some very exciting projects that bring teachers and students from BC, Alaska, and Hawaii together. So Nikki, I'll pass to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Hka Cindy. It's Squeechel. My name is Nikki Lineham. I am zooming into you today from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen speaking peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, and the Wasanich peoples. And I'm going to jump right in. I just have some images, and I'm going to, as my Hawaiian friends say, talk story with you a little bit about the work that I've been doing in ethnomathematics. I want to start by saying that I am a part of a larger collaborative collective who is doing this work. So I'm just speaking on behalf of all of us. So I got started in this work when I had been a classroom math teacher for a number of years and was really striving to, as a settler, to understand how to authentically integrate different Indigenous perspectives, worldviews, and histories into mathematics. And everything I was finding was very tokenistic. And I stumbled upon this postgraduate certificate in ethnomathematics at the University of Hawaii. So I was in the first cohort of that program, 2018 to 2019. And then that has led to all of this heart-filling work that I've been able to do. So this shows the beginning of our process where my colleagues and I, we co-created and co-taught remotely during the pandemic, an ethnomath class to a group of 9th to 11th graders in Angoon, Alaska. And what we did was we found, instead of starting with math concepts, we actually started with contexts that were meaningful for students in their culture, their communities, and just their lives. It was very clear immediately that they were all basketball fanatics, so we integrated basketball a lot. We studied quadratic equations and visual data. We also then looked at, they have a very unique port where it's very difficult to get boats in and out of because the tide changes so significantly. So we explored Pythagorean's theorem through looking at their actual boat ramp and how it changes over time, as well as looking at some of Dan Mayer's simulations. And I'm just showing this video here. And we found very, again, quickly, this was no surprise because I find most students learn math best visually and very engaged and hands-on. So we approached a lot of the mathematical proofs in this visual way. On the far right, you have students, we were asking them to estimate heights of trees, and I'll explain why we were doing that in a moment. And we gave them some different measurement methods they could use. And this one was our favorite because a student took what mattered to them, which was Snapchat, and created their own measurements. So they took a picture of the school principal standing next to the tree, and then they made a sticker on Snapchat. I have no idea how any of this was possible because I don't use it, but and then they figured out how many Ron Gleason's tall the tree was, measured his height, and they had an accurate estimate. So we love this example of how they were taking something that mattered to them, their tech, and applied it in a mathematical way. So out of this grew into working alongside with educators and students in Hawaii. And that the tree measurement came into this. There is a historical kinship. There's likely an ancient kinship between Tlingit, Haida, Tsimshian folks in Alaska and the Hawaiians. And this one in particular is back in the 70s. At the beginning of the Polynesian Voyaging Society, when folks were working on revitalizing the traditional Hawaiian canoe. And because of colonization, Hawaii no longer had any trees that were big enough for their double-hulled canoes. You can see here, they're quite large. And the elders of some of these students in Angoon were part of the group that actually found big enough trees in Alaska and gifted them, some giant Sitka spruce, to the Hawaiians, who then made it into one of the canoes you can see here, which is called the Hawaii Loa. And so together we were co-learning about our cultures, and there was all those cultural exchanges, but we were also engaged in land-based, culture-based ethnomathematics learning, which also comes like that work comes from Dr. Linda Ferruto in Hawaii. She's also a junior navigator of in the Polynesian Voyaging Society. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I encourage you to look it up. The Hokulea is currently on its 4-year journey, and they work with and visit Indigenous communities around the world. They circumnavigate the world using only mental constructs. There's no metal on their boat. They have created what's called a Hawaiian compass, and it's a mental construct. It's not something that's in your hand, and it uses enormous amounts of mathematics, trigonometry, Pythagoras, but even little like grade 1 and 2 students can access it by standing in circle and doing activities. So over this time, we've been connecting with our Hawaiian friends and our Angoon students and educators. We also found that there was a need to support the educators in Angoon who are part of the community, and many of them are not certified teachers. They don't have a teaching certificate. They are the teachers within their communities. So we also started a professional learning community. And so last year we had a large number of adults and students so that we could all learn from our Hawaiian kumu, our Hawaiian teachers as well. And part of what the students did last year was part of their ethnomath program. They worked with master carver, Tlingit carver Wayne Price, who's in the bottom right, and they built a dugout canoe, and it was the first canoe that had been built in Angoon in 140 years. The US Navy had sunk all of the Tlingit canoes 140 years ago and outlawed them. And so these students got to, right from measurement to finding the tree to, all the protocol involved with it, and actually created the canoe. And because they have now created these beautiful relationships with their Hawaiian ohana, their Hawaiian family members, the folks on the Hokulea actually changed their plan. They have this 4-year route to be in Angoon to help them launch their canoe, and it's called Unity. So that happened last year, which was unbelievable. I unfortunately was just recovering from surgery, so although I was invited, I was unable to attend, but saw lots of pictures and video. And then this past year was our first launching of our ethnomath symposium. And we had this really clear vision idea of what we wanted, and it did not all turn out how we had thought, but that's okay. It was still really amazing. For me, it's being a part of this community, and it really is like a family. Our youngest member of our symposium was 6 weeks old, and our oldest member was 78, because we had elders along with us. We had kids of all ages. People brought families, and we learned together on and from the land. Part of ethnomath is service learning, so you can see a little bit of that happening here. And our hope was to have students and teachers co-learning and co-planning together. Didn't quite work out that way, but we absolutely co-learned together. And we also, my highlight from this past event was we had a youth-led night where the youth had to lead us in something. It could be anything that mattered to them. And our Nishka team led us in song and dance, and our Alaska group, they all came together and they taught us form line art. You can see there, they had made us all these beautiful cedar paddles, mini paddle, well, quite big. And we learned how to do some art and the importance of it. And then the Hawaiians taught us how to make leis, and again, the history and meaning behind that. So those are just a few snippets. It's really difficult to share all of this with you in a little bit, but I wanted to share from our students' mouths because they're the ones that matter in this the most. And so here are a couple of snippets from a video that was made all by students about how they feel about ethnomath. So it's just about a minute long. Whoops, that was, and we have a new symposium coming up this year. But for some reason, I'm hoping this will play. And it's not going to. So I will share that our upcoming symposium that we're planning for, and we're also inviting folks who are interested. And the planning committee, the folks in Angoon have said they would really love to have adults only educators at the one in November in Hawaii. So it'll be 4 days again of ethnomath where we actually do all the ethnomath, and then we give educators a chance to work together to figure out how they're going to implement this in their own context. And then following that, we're going to start our PLC, and we're hoping that the same group are then going to bring their students, and Alaska is wanting to host us in July of 2025, where we will work on ethnomath activities related to harvesting seafood and plants, as well as go on a canoe journey. So I'm going to try, I practiced this multiple times and it worked, but I'm going to see if it works if I don't have it on the display, and you can hear a little bit from the students.
I've seen it firsthand where it's getting kids out of their comfort zone, and it's just helping everyone become closer together and with their culture. So they're learning about themselves and where they come from.
So much. It was probably my least favorite subject and probably my lowest grade. And then as the math came in, I was like, what's the math? And the benefit for me is I feel like the math is just easier to learn because you're not just given a piece of paper with a bunch of numbers on it. You're implementing it into subjects that you might like. And you're not only learning more about math, but you're also learning more about your culture. I want to learn more about math, but only because I would also be learning more about my culture, and then I could pass down what I know about my culture down to the next generation. Keep it going.
Say everyone learns in their own way, and so ethnomath gives you the ability to learn in your own way, and not just all have to learn one way because it's taught that way, because not everyone thinks that way.
Great. Thank you. So I'll just leave that, and feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about that. And I welcome your questions. Ichika.
Wow, thank you very much, Nikki. People are asking for some links, so I just stuck in some links in the chat for the ethnomath with Linda and the Sea Stories Alaska, and maybe you have some others that you can add to those. Anybody have any questions for Nikki or thoughts?
Yeah, I'll put in some more links, and yeah, the ethnomath link that you put in there, Cynthia, is a good one. They actually have a curriculum library that all of us who have gone through the program, similar, I think, to what Hannah was sharing earlier, and it's like on a repository. So there's a bunch of ethnomath lesson plans there, and many of them are based in Hawaii, but I was able to take what I learned and then apply it to local contexts.
Mhm. So have you tried some of these in the schools around Victoria or around in Vancouver Island where you're doing your consulting, working with teachers and
Yeah,
students?
we've definitely I've done snippets. So I've done with groups of grade 6, 7 students where we looked at the Gorge Waterway, which is a pretty important waterway historically and contemporary for Lekwungen speaking peoples, Songhees and Esquimalt. And the nice thing about ethnomath is almost a bit of a misnomer. Really what I see it as is it's the cross curricular, because inevitably within within an ethnomath lesson, there's science, social studies, usually English language arts, art. So yeah, I've definitely been able to do snippets and am hoping to do some longer pieces, and I'm talking with some schools about engaging in some more bigger projects around that for sure.
Yeah, I really like the oh good. Okay, I can say more later, but we'll ask Monica to jump in.
I just want to say, like, I saw you, Nikki. I saw you speak at the BCAMT years ago, and I still use that thing that you taught me about how, in ethnomath, they use people used walking away from the base of a tree and then looking down through their legs to see the tip of the tree before they ever had clinometers and stuff like that. And I want to say thank you because kids love that thing, and it's a great way to teach it without trig, and it's a great way to say, hey, what would you have done without a clinometer? So I don't know. It's a pretty cool one.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit more about what it is for those that aren't familiar with it.
It's quite hilarious to see. So this is one of it's what I found to be, and it's been labeled, and I tried to dig through the research to see like where did this come from, and it was labeled as like an indigenous way of measuring trees. And essentially it engages with the idea that if you're walking away from the tree, if you turn your back to it and you bend right over, I'm not going to do this on camera because this is recorded, and you look through your legs. So imagine bending over, you're looking through your legs. You need to walk out far enough away so that you can see the tip of the tree underneath your legs. And the idea is that that's a 45-degree angle. So if we assume that the tree is at a 90-degree and you've got a 45 here, then of course we engage the students in knowing that it would be, an isosceles with the 45. So however far away you are from the tree is also how tall the tree is. So that's one method. I have a little pack up, and folks can email me. I'm very happy to send you, like I have this written up as an activity where there's multiple methods. So depending on your grade level will depend on which methods you use. Some of them we can do with like grade 3, 4, 5 students where it's more like multiplication. Then there's the angle ones. And then of course you can get into similar triangles and sun shadows and all that type of fun
Thanks
stuff.
for letting me put you on the spot, Nikki, but I just love that thing and I've been using it for years. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Monica, for reliving that for us. Good, thank you. And maybe you could put your contact information, Nikki, in the chat, and then people would know how to connect with you. And maybe some of these materials could also go up with the recording when we're able to.
Absolutely, I'm happy to share. I'll share that and the flyer and whatnot if people are interested. But it just the ethnomath. It's just this really beautiful community that's been forming, and my role is mostly behind the scenes because I'm not Indigenous, but I get to learn. It's like the most honor, like it's the most heart-filling work, and it feels like such an honor to be able to witness the relationship building and the learning, especially for these kids where math just comes alive for them. They see themselves in it in a way that I've never seen before.
Yeah, beautiful. And for so many people, math does just the opposite, doesn't it?
That's right.
Okay, let me read. Okay, good. Any other questions for Nikki? I'm gonna remove the spotlight so I can see everybody.
Sure. I'm also just gonna pop in the chat. This is an 8-minute video, and it gives you a bit more detail about ethnomath and the work we're doing. And again, it was created by one of our students named Luke Jack from Angoon.
Very nice. It would be an interesting project to look at the Haida canoe and the Polynesian hokuleas and the difference between the two, partly because of the the ocean, oceans that are being navigated, and the winds are quite different. So there's not the sails like there are in the Hokulea.
Yeah.
And then also navigating, because on Haida Gwaii, we don't get this, including myself here, the sun isn't always shining as much as it is in Hawaii. You get more of the overcast, so you're not able to use a star map in the same
That's
way.
right.
So it would be really interesting to kind of compare those navigational strategies, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what we were curious about. So our last ethnomath, we kind of said like it's the unity amongst the Pacific, and we had Anishka elder Elvin Azak with us, and he was like a kid at Christmas going into the Polynesian canoe. They actually let him in. You're not supposed to, but and he is also a sailor. And he came out and he said to me, they have the exact same lashings that we use in Nishka. He's like, and I don't understand how that's possible because we've never met. And I said, well, how do you know you never met? Right? Like, so yeah, he was blown away that he could see the same lashing patterns, because in the Hokulea, all the voyaging canoes, it's all lashing. So that's how the whole boat's held together. There's no metal, there's no pegs. It's hundreds and hundreds of feet of lashings. It's beautiful and mathematical.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you very much, Nikki. You gave us lots to think about there. And I think people will be able to check out some of these links and resources that you've shared. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not very good at unspotlighting, but so thank you for your presentation, and also to Tamara and Megan for yours. And this was a nice combination, these two sessions coming together. Giving us lots to think further about, and lots to think about in terms of what we might bring in with our students in our own classrooms, bringing culture and mathematics together. It's now time for us to wrap up this session. You get a bit of a stretch. Not much you can do in 5 minutes, but you can go get something to drink, or just run around the living room or something, wherever you are, for 5 minutes, and then come back at 4:18 for session 2. And we have 4 different circles that you can choose to join. If you feel like you want to start to complete the feedback form, you can do that. And the link for that is in the program. You can use the QR code or the link there. Okay, well, thank you very much again to our presenters, and thank you everybody for joining, and we'll see you in the next session.